Hi, I'm Mary Mahoney. I work at the Center for Career Development and Academic Exploration here at UT, and I want to share some information with you today about interview dining etiquette. Got quite a bit of information to cover. Sorry that I can't be there in person, and wow, sorry we can't do this over a meal, but hopefully this will be good information to help you. One of the things that you want to think about when you are, let's just say, and we're going to talk for a moment about in person. When you're invited to a meal with an employer, with someone you're interviewing with, or even networking, and there's the potential to be interviewing, you do need to think about your meal as being part of the interview. And it's important that you remember why you're there. Many times, the recruiter, the interviewer may say, "Oh, just relax, just enjoy yourself. This isn't part of the interview." Well, let's put it this way. If you do something wrong, it truly does become a part of the interview. And so those are a lot of the things that we want to talk about today and help prepare you for this type of setting going forward. And so again, as I have here on the screen, always you want to think about making a good impression, getting to know your interviewers. Definitely being over a meal is a little more, I'm going to say, relaxed, meaning you're answering some interview questions, but you're also getting to know each other. They're asking things about what you enjoy doing, what you like. You can ask them the same things. Ask about their time with the company, how long. But again, do always keep in the back of your mind, you are there as part of an interview process. And so just kind of think about that. I've got my comment here at the bottom that says, don't focus on getting full or on the quality of the food. It truly is about the interview. When this session is over, what you should be thinking as you're leaving is, what a great time it was. I learned so much about the person, the company, the position. I really feel that I marketed myself well. It's not that you walk out of there and think, wow, that was the best meal I ever had. Again, it's about the interview and how you prepared for it and how you handled yourself. So when you think about it, you may wonder, what is the purpose of doing this in a meal setting? Many times employers simply want to see how you handle yourself, how you interact with individuals. You may think, okay, that's crazy, but noticing my second bullet here, I said how you interact with the wait staff. Are you polite to them? Do you say please? Do you say thank you? Are you courteous in your interactions? And even if you ask for something to be changed, are you polite about it? That says a lot about a person, about who they are as an individual. And these can be small things that the company is observing and trying to see, again, how you interact with a variety of people. And realize also that many times they're evaluating to see, are you a good representative of their company? It may be a position that you're interviewing for that you will be taking people out to dinner or out for things. And so, again, they want to make sure that you're comfortable and that you are a good representative of the company. So let's start to think about, imagine that you're sitting down at the table, the interview table, wherever it may be, and you're kind of like, what are some of the first things I need to do? Well, one of the first things is putting your napkin in your lap. You basically want to do that as soon as you are seated. If you're with a group of people and everyone sits down, you might wait a minute or two just because everyone may just be doing some, shall we say, general conversation. You're obviously not eating or drinking anything, but feel free really to put your napkin in your lap as soon as you are seated. As I mentioned here, when you open up your napkin, you want to place it across your lap, typically with a fold towards you. You can do it in a rectangle kind of fold, a triangular, or you may open it up completely to cover your lap. Either one is more up to you and whatever you're most comfortable with, or maybe let's say how messy you may be and you want to cover your whole lap. So just kind of think about those things. Also, during the meal, this is hard to think about, but we think about our napkin and bringing it up to, we say wipe our mouth. You're really not wiping, it's blotting. It's just to maybe get a little bit of moisture, and then you put your napkin back in your lap. One key thing to think about is if you need to leave the table, first off, always try to excuse yourself between courses. In other words, maybe they've just removed the salad and they haven't bought the entree. That's a perfect time then to just excuse yourself for a minute if you need to. It's not disruptive. And always one thing also is say something to a person to one side of you. You don't have to announce to the entire table, but just say to at least one person, I'll be back in just a moment. You don't have to give them any reasons, but you just let them know you're stepping away. That way, if the server comes around with the next course and they see someone not sitting there, that individual can say, oh, they'll be right back. And so the server knows to go ahead and either place the food or just check back in a moment. But again, as you excuse yourself, just sort of gather your napkin in your hand. I don't mean fold it, but just gather it up and then place it on your chair seat. This makes it easy when you come back that you can reach for your napkin, and as you kind of slide back into your seat, just put the napkin right back in your lap and you're ready to go. Who knew that using a napkin could be so intimidating, possibly? Okay, so what I've brought up here is just some things to think about. This is the potential items that could be at a table setting, at your place setting. I just thought I would put it up there because the first reaction is to look at all of these items and it can be almost overwhelming. In most cases, you will not necessarily have all of these sitting there in front of you, but again, I just wanted you to kind of have this list and be aware of it. One thing to also keep in mind is many times your utensils, and this probably would only be two forks, a knife, and a spoon, but they may be rolled in your napkin and placed like at your place setting. If that's the case, pick up that roll, lay it in your lap, and unroll it there. That's why it's safer. You may not drop something, a utensil on the floor. And as you unroll it, you can put the utensils in the proper location that they go on the table. So again, just some things to think about. So let's show you where all of these items could go. So as you look at this right here, you can start to see you really could end up with all of these things at a table. Place cards we probably won't see as much, and oftentimes we may not have all of the glasses on the table, but again, there can be this cluster of glasses that are above the right, like above your knife and your spoons. A couple of things that you want to think about when you're looking at the utensils, in essence, is you start on the outside and you work your way in. So looking at our place setting here, soup may be the first course. So there's your soup spoon on the outside. Then the salad course, there's your salad fork on the left. A teaspoon in case you need it for possibly coffee or iced tea for a sweetener or something. And then you've got your dinner knife, which many times may also serve as a salad knife. So you may use it to cut your salad, but then you want to make sure that you keep it for the main course because often they're not really bringing another knife. And then, of course, you've got what we call your dinner fork, or I like to call it the entree fork. Please note the utensils across the top of the place setting, the dessert spoon and the cake fork. Sometimes you'll have both of them, sometimes just one. If you sit down and it's just a fork, then you're probably going to have something like cake or pie. A spoon could be ice cream, pudding, a mousse. And then many times you'll have both. Maybe it's cake or pie a la mode, or they're just giving you both utensils so that you can determine which one you would prefer to use. But they'll always be, if they're in this place setting, above your main plate. A couple of other things I want to point out is notice your bread and butter plate, the bread plate and the bread knife. Those in essence are above your forks, okay? I already mentioned about your glasses or water or whatever may be above your knife and spoons. And if a cup and saucer is on the table, it will be to the immediate right. One of the things that I want you to think about, and we can't really do it today, I'm going to try to hold up my fingers, but you can make a B with your left hand and a D with your right. So imagine doing this when you're sitting at the table and you're able to realize, okay, this is my place setting. Here's my bread and butter. Here are my drinks. And so you always then kind of know that these are your items. The key thing, just don't actually do this at a meal. An easier way, if you want to try to remember, is think about a BMW. Kind of maybe dream that maybe a car you want someday. But think about BMW. You've got your bread, your meal, and your water, or possibly your wine. And so again, realizing when you sit down, one of the first things I do is recommend that you look at your place setting and you realize what all is yours. Sometimes a table can be a little crowded and that bread and butter plate may be a little bit more to the left. I sometimes will just reach up and kind of just gently pull it back a little because you really don't want the person next to you accidentally using it, because some people may not realize who does that bread and butter plate belong to, but you now know and you've got these examples. Just to show you a picture from, I guess we'll say a real event, here is one from an athletic function. Also, this is kind of what we call at times preset, meaning the salad is already on the table, the dessert is already on the table. But this gives you a good shot. You can see, looking at the picture, the forks are very close to that cup and saucer. Well, that cup and saucer belongs to the person to your left, and those are your forks. And that would be something where I would actually just kind of sit down and scoot them my way just a little bit. Notice also there's just the single fork above for the cake. And the other thing I wanted to point out are the napkins. Notice the napkins are sitting in the cups. Remember, your cup and your drinks will be above your knife and spoon and to the right. So when you sit down at this table, you will know the napkin that's in that cup to the right is yours. And so that is the one that you'll want to take out. You'll be surprised how many times people sit down at a function like this and really are like, which napkin's mine? And so again, it goes back to remembering where the drinks are, if the napkin happens to be in the cup, or sometimes it's in the glass. And so again, just think about that. You also saw on the previous slide, the napkin could be laying to the left, and it also could be right in the very center. So just kind of a variety of things to think about. I also want to mention one thing in this picture. Notice the salad with the cherry tomatoes. Cherry tomatoes are delicious. Cherry tomatoes can be dangerous. What I mean by that is be careful if you go to spear them, and definitely be careful if you go to cut them. It's very hard sometimes to spear and or cut just because of the shape of them. So be careful because you certainly don't want to basically squirt someone as you're cutting or have it go flying across the table. Just be aware of those things. I also just want to comment, looking ahead on this picture, you can see the lemons, you can see the sweeteners, that's probably a dressing in the silver. These are going to be items that you need to pass, and we'll talk about those in just a second. Just to give you another picture, kind of more of a down view, and again, you can see how it could be confusing. I don't know if you can see my pointer, but looking right here, that could be easy for this person to reach over it, whereas that's really yours. And so again, just realizing sometimes the tables can be crowded, and that's why it's confusing knowing what belongs to what person. And so just kind of think about those things. All righty. Moving on to the next, as I mentioned, you want to think about passing items. One of the things to keep in mind is once you're seated and shall we say the meal has begun, so it may just be fixing your tea, it could be passing salad dressing if there's just the common container on the table. You always want to try to pass items to the right. The other thing is to keep in mind is whatever is closest to you. If you remember back to the picture where the plate of lemons, I'm not really a person that uses lemons, but if they're sitting in front of me, then it's easier for me to reach for it, to pick them up, help myself if I want one, and then pass it to the right. Try always to pass items to the right. It keeps everything going in the same direction. And that way, kind of, you're not bumping up, shall we say, against each other. I've seen it before where some are passing to the right and some to the left, and then you're sitting there like, I've got two things coming at me. But realize again, if everyone starts passing things to the left, don't correct them. Just for that event, go with the flow. But just kind of keep in mind about how to pass and things like that. All righty. So a couple of other things to think about. Sweetener packets. A lot of us I know really like to have our tea sweet, but here's the key thing. Notice it says limit yourself to one or two packets of whatever sweetener you're using during the course of a meal. This doesn't include an after dinner coffee. Again, part of the reason on this is just not being excessive. So it's just something to think about. I also would caution you and not as much use sugar because it can be very hard to try to dissolve, and you don't want to be spending your time clanging there trying to stir and get the sugar to dissolve, and you've got all this ice and it's making noise. It may not be the best taste in the world, but switch to one of the sweetener packets, the pink, the blue, or the yellow. They dissolve much easier. And again, it will do fine to sweeten it just enough for the meal. Remember, it's not about the meal, it's why you're there and how you're interacting. However, along the lines, with the packet, tear it about 3/4 of the way across the top. Certainly pour it in your tea, and then just don't crumble it up, but leave the packet. It could be at the side of your plate, and you might even end up resting your spoon on it that you use to stir your tea. If you do have a cup and saucer, you could certainly lay the packet on the back, kind of on the rim of the saucer, and then you could put your spoon there on top of it. or slightly under the saucer rim. I don't mean pick up the saucer and put it under, but just kind of under the rim. Basically, what you're doing is just trying to maintain the presence of the table. On the salt and pepper, you should not salt and pepper your food before tasting it. And so I can just imagine some of you are like rolling your eyes thinking, no, I always need to salt and pepper it. Here's the thing. The proper is to taste your food first, take a bite, and then determine that it needs salt and pepper. And this is something that a lot of recruiters, interviewers will watch you, because if you automatically reach for the salt and or pepper or use both, you are making assumptions without all the facts. And so that can be an indication of how you would make decisions on the job. So evaluate, take a bite, taste, and then determine. And then the other key thing is, if you do ask, let's just say I might say, could you please pass me the salt when you're finished? Nice way to word it. I've said when you're finished. It can be passed around to me. Others can use it in between. But here's the key thing. Salt and pepper stay together. So even though I only ask for the salt, whoever's starting to pass it, you should pick up both the salt and pepper and pass them together around to the individual. So again, just some things like that to think about. So pacing yourself. I wish I was there and I could get you all to raise your hands, but mentally think and maybe raise your hand on your own. But are you a slow eater, which I am? Or are you a fast eater? There's some people I sit down to eat with, and I mean, I feel like I've maybe got the sweetener in my tea, I've done something and I'm ready to eat, and I look over and they're done. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. But here's the key thing. When you're at these type of events, you need to pace yourself with the individuals at your table. If it's a group setting and there's other tables, you don't worry about the other tables, but you're focusing on the individuals at your table. And so I'm going to say it this way. If you're a slow eater, pick up your pace. If you're a fast eater, slow down. Again, this is to be a relaxed meal. You're having conversation, you're eating. So again, relax, enjoy, and pace yourself with your table mates. If you do look around the table, maybe you've been talking and then you go back and you're taking a bite or two, and you look around and you realize, oh gosh, everyone else is finished. They've laid down their utensils. They're waiting on me for like the next course. Take that last bite or two and then lay down your utensils, because just let it go. That's it, because you don't want to hold up everyone else. And so again, that's why I say watch the people at your table and pace yourself. Definitely wait until everyone has been served. You do not, I've seen it before where the plate is put in front of the person and they just immediately start digging in. No, you wait until everyone at the table has been served. Sometimes the waiter may have to make another trip to bring the rest. You just sit there and you have conversation. You sip on your drink. It's not going to take that long. They'll be there in just a second. But again, better that everyone begins at the same time and then you're able to progress through the meal. Okay, so what I'm talking about for a moment that we call a preset meal, this is more like you've gone to a function and the food has already been ordered for you. And so you've not had any say so in it. And a lot of times the first reaction is, well, what if I'm served something that I don't care for? Well, you're may not going to like what I say. Pardon me. Suck it up and take a bite or two. Now, if you are allergic to something, or it's against, like if you're a vegetarian, which we'll talk about in a second, I'm not telling you to do that. But in most anything, you can eat a bite or two. It's always weird how I sort of say this, but you can eat a bite or two, and as you're taking that bite or two, move it a little. It gives the illusion that you've eaten more than you really have, and then you can really focus on the other things that you like. But always, I'm going to say, keep an open mind and try things. You may be surprised at something you thought you didn't like, you really do, or maybe it's been fixed in a different manner. The other key thing is when you're at these, what I'm going to call business or professional meals, and that is what we're focusing on today, you really do not have to eat everything on your plate. This is not the clean plate club. That may sound strange, but it's almost better to just leave a little something on the plate. It's showing you enjoyed it and that you were satisfied. And so there again, that gives you that ability to something that you don't care for as much. Yes, you eat a bite or two, but you can kind of just leave it. So again, keep that in mind that you have that flexibility. If you are a vegetarian, for example, and they're starting to come around and let's say serve the entree, obviously you can immediately start to see it's some type of meat. Well, when they get to you, Don't make a big scene. Don't have to be real loud. You can get the server's attention, kind of like lean down. They'll kind of, that's the signal, they'll lean down. And then you might just say something like, could I have a vegetable plate? Or do you have a vegetable plate? You don't have to get into, I can't eat that, I'm a vegetarian. Just literally saying, could I have a vegetable plate? The server will know immediately what you need. They may have a plate in their hand and they'll say, certainly be with you in a moment. And they'll just step around, set that down for the next person. They'll head right back to the kitchen to alert them that they need a plate for a vegetarian, and they'll bring it out as quickly as possible. And again, everyone should wait until everyone has been served to begin eating. One of the other things I also want to caution you is if you are allergic, you may really need to ask that question, shall we say, early in the meal. Um, Whether you're ordering or whether it is a preset, I could potentially see it a preset that you might get the server's attention. They come over and you might just say something like, I'm highly allergic to nuts. Is there anything I need to be aware of? That is alerting the server that you do have this allergy. You've identified what it is. They certainly may be able to respond and let you know, but they may also need to check in the kitchen with the chef. And so they may say, let me check a moment, I'll be right back. The idea there is they're checking for all the courses. And so they're finding out, is there anything that they do need to be aware of to alert you to? But it's also giving them time in case they need to adapt something and bring out a different item for you. So again, just say it quietly, deal with the server. It's not that you're trying to hide or definitely not ashamed of when you're doing this. It's showing that you're a professional, that you are able to interact with your server, state what you need, or ask the question. They're taking care of it. And half the time, nobody else at the table knows what's going on because you've just done it so nice and quietly. And again, that's what you're striving for, is just showing that professionalism. Okay, so maybe you're served soup. I wish I could be there to really show it to you, but I tried to get this picture that hopefully will communicate it. So if you imagine a soup bowl in front of you, you're going to dip into it and in essence go away. So go towards the back side of the bowl. I always say hesitate so that any droplets fall off. And then think about completing the circle and bringing it up to your mouth and quietly sipping or inserting in your mouth and getting the items. I will also caution you that when you take that first bite, as you look at your soup, if you can even see like steam, I'd almost take my spoon and gently, quietly stir it one or two times. I don't literally mean stir, but move it in your bowl. That will help release the heat and the steam a little more quickly. But when you take that first sip, take a small one so that you can gauge kind of how does it taste, but how hot is it? Because you may find that you need to talk a little more, move your spoon one or two more times to help a little bit more of that heat release. But again, think about making a circle, dipping into the bowl, getting some on the spoon, heading towards the back, hesitating, and then coming around with the completion to your mouth, and then back down to the bowl. So just some things to think about. Bread or roll, whatever you want to call it. Here's the key thing. You really do not just like pick up the roll and just start cutting on it and buttering the whole thing. Typically, as you can see in this picture, you're going to break off a bite of the roll, and then you may have the butter on your plate there with it, and then you'll butter that bite and eat it. And then when you're ready for another bite of your roll, with your fingers over your bread and butter plate with the roll, you'll break off the bite and you'll butter it. The only exception would be sometimes if you've been served a hot biscuit or muffin, corn muffin like, you certainly can break it in half when you receive it. You can butter it, put it back together. But the same thing, when you get ready to eat it, break off small bites. You just need to watch it because it's going to be a little bit messier. But again, that's the one thing you can do. But always just keep in mind that you're breaking off small bites in eating as you're ready. When you have the opportunity to order, this is be when you've taken out, you're again the guest, but you're looking at a menu. Here's some things that you want to think about. I've got on here, let the host lead. The interesting thing is 9 times out of 10, they're going to defer to you because you're the guest. But sometimes the host will say something like, if anyone would like to get a drink, and they're implying alcohol, we'll come back to that in a moment. A lot of times they'll say, let me order a couple of appetizers for the table, and they'll kind of confirm with you. And then they may even at the end recommend dessert. But most of the time, what you need to be aware of is that you will be looking at the menu and you want to think about ordering something that's in the mid price range. It's pretty easy to look at a menu kind of find the most expensive to the least, and then find those items that are more in that mid price range. Again, the idea that you'll order first, so this could even cause an issue sometimes when they'll start with you and ask, what would you like to drink? We'll actually talk about that more in just a minute, so I'm going to kind of skip it for a second. But when it gets into the ordering and you've picked out that mid price range, a couple of other things that you want to think about. Is this something I like? That may sound crazy, but this is not the time to order something you've never had. You want to order something that you know you like and you will enjoy. And you also want to order something that is easy to eat, not something challenging. For example, I would never suggest spaghetti. It's just messy to try to eat and it just gets on you so easily. Obviously, ribs are not a good idea. Crab legs, I mean, I'm just kind of rattling off a few things for you to think about. One of the other things, though, I have a comment on here that says ask for recommendations. So you've looked at the menu, you've kind of got an idea of some things, and you've got that mid price range. But you heard the person, for example, talk about this is one of their favorite restaurants. I'll use an example I always do. I love to go to Chesapeake's. It is really, truly one of my favorite. If I were the host there and someone asked me what would I recommend, I'd probably say something like, well, the blackened scallops are my favorite, but they also have a very good filet mignon. Okay, so one, I've given two different types of, shall we say, meats. I always try to at least give a couple of recommendations. And so my guest kind of goes, ooh, those both sound good. And they go back and they look at the menu. Okay, the blackened scallops are probably in that mid price range, maybe starting to get a little out, but they're definitely in the mid range. But I also recommended the filet mignon and said you should try it. And it's out of the price range, that mid. It's not extremely high, but it's beyond what we would call the mid. But I recommended it. I said, oh, you should try it. So again, that gives you that flexibility to possibly order that item or to order something else up to that amount. Never go over the amount. But again, in general, if you just want to be safe, I would probably just say find something in that mid price range. And also key again, I just want to stress something you like and something that's easy to eat. This is not the time to be challenged by your food. So let's talk about alcohol for a second. I made the comment, what if the server asks you first what you would like to drink? Key thing to think about. First off, you need to be 21 or older. That's just the bottom line. But the other thing is, it can be awkward if you're the first person who's asked what you'd like to drink because you're like, okay, do I want to get an alcoholic drink or should I just get tea or water? Sometimes in a case like that, just sort of defer back to your host and just say, do you have any recommendations? And hopefully that's what I call a nudge to remind them that they do need to give you some guidance because you don't want to do something that may be inappropriate. As I've got on here, you don't want to be the first and only person to order alcohol. That can be very embarrassing. The host may end up saying something like, would you all like some wine? Who likes red? Who likes white? They may end up ordering a bottle of each. And then as they come around to serve, you can select which is the one you want. Key thing, even if they're serving both, you don't get both. Only take one. So always keep that in mind. If by chance you order first and you're hesitant, and let's just say you go ahead and you order a glass of water, and then the next people or next few people order glasses of wine, it's really much easier at the end to go, that sounds really good. Could I get a glass also? So you've kind of heard what everyone else has done, and so you're adding a glass of wine to your order. Much easier to do that than end up being the person who orders alcohol and no one else does. There is just not a gracious way to back out of that one. So just kind of keep that in mind. I also want to touch for a moment on having alcohol at a reception. Many times you'll be at a reception or some type of social event for a couple of hours. Again, I'm not going to get into how well you can hold your liquor, we'll put it that way. But I would recommend in most cases being there for a while, start off if you want with an alcoholic drink, but then probably for your next drink, switch to something non-alcoholic. Again, you've got to realize you are being observed and watched, whether you think about it or not. And you want to make sure that you are always in control of everything you're saying, everything you're doing. You certainly could be with a representative from a company and they may be having quite a bit to drink and having, we'll say, a good time. You know what? They've got their job. You cannot compare yourself to that. You need to realize, again, impressions and be very careful what you're communicating. One thing I do want to touch on for just a moment, we talked about so much that we've been doing right now is in person, but there's a lot of events happening now, obviously in the virtual world. I say Zoom, but it could be any of the virtual platforms. Try to avoid eating, like you can almost see in this picture right here. It's like, okay, the hamburger looks really great, but it's just like, here's this mass in front of you. And if you really start watching people on Zoom, really, it's not pretty to watch people to eat. We don't notice it as much when we're at a table out somewhere because we're all kind of at different stages. We're watching what we're doing, we're looking up and talking. But when you're on Zoom, you've got like all those screens in front of you, or however many people are on the call, and you really can so easily see everything that people are doing. So, a couple of things to keep in mind. You certainly may be invited to what I'm going to call a Zoom happy hour. I've been to several. They've said bring your drink. Again, 21 or older, that's key. Otherwise, you take something else to drink. And so they're trying to just make it a little more relaxed and fun and something like that. And so that's fine. If they do have, like, I had a lunch and learn the other day where we were to eat while we were having a presentation, but again, everyone could see you. Get something simple. I wouldn't really get a hamburger. I would get something that maybe I could pick up easily with my fingers, maybe cheese and crackers. Maybe I'll get a fork, eat a simple salad or something. Pardon me. But again, you want to think about not a lot of, shall we say, interaction up here on the screen. What's just something that you can kind of bring up and you can kind of chew a little or something like that. And again, realize you're still talking, you're still interacting with people, and that is really what your focus is on and what you want to be communicating. So again, potentially try to avoid eating on a virtual platform, but if it is part of, shall we say, the event, just have something simple. And I would recommend that you always just have like a drink or a glass of water handy, just in case you need to refresh, as I'm going to do right now. So just some things to think about for the Zoom world. Let's talk for a minute about being at, as we mentioned, reception or social. You can kind of see this event here. It's got the high top tables. People are mingling around. Oh, yes, those were the good old days. And again, I realize that most of the things that you will go to this fall will be on a virtual platform, but we still need to be aware of this because life will get back to a more normal one day. A couple of things to think about. And here are some variations I'm going to give you. Normally, when you are at these events, you do not want to have both food and drink in your hands. Many times there are not the tables that you're seeing here. And so you're literally standing there trying to maybe drink and eat. With both things in your hand, you really just can't do it. You're kind of doing what I call a juggling act of how am I holding my drink and my plate trying to eat. And so it's much better to start off with maybe just a drink, have it to sip on. It's easy to talk to someone. And then maybe you switch to a plate of food. And again, picking up items that are easy to stand and eat that you may not even need a fork or anything for, just your fingers, and even maybe trying to avoid some of the things that are really messy. One of the things that I would have normally said is always keep your right hand ready. So typically what I would recommend is like holding your drink in your left hand. So your right hand normally would be ready to shake hands. Opposite, when you're holding food, you might hold it on your right hand. You've got like your little napkin, if you can see, and like your plate, and you're eating with your left. Someone comes up and you slide it over. And your right hand is what we say dry and clean and ready to shake hands. In this day and age, if you are in person, I would simply be cautious. Many people are not shaking hands now, and it's okay. It may feel weird that we're not doing it, but I think it's going to be a while before it comes back. And in one way, it may never come back because if you think about it, it's always been kind of a way to, shall we say, transfer germs. When you meet someone or greet them, I mean, we've seen the fist bumps and the elbows. I would probably do a nod, or I'm going to say a bow. And when I say a bow, I don't literally mean you're bowing down, but it's almost if you kind of like, hi, like it's that head nod. The head's kind of down a little bit. It's an indication that you are recognizing, you are acknowledging that individual. And then you may be introducing yourself, hi, Mary Mahoney. So it's just kind of that little, I don't know if you can get the way my head is moving, but it's just something to think about. Keep in mind also that when you're at these events, I know it's hard, but you're not there to eat. You're there to meet people, to connect, to network. And so I often recommend that when you're going to something like this, maybe even eat before you go so that when you get there, you're not as hungry. And that way you can focus much more on interacting and connecting with the individuals. A couple other things I want you to think about is if you have a name tag, don't really have a good picture here, but if you're wearing a name tag and it's like a paste on or a clip on, it does go in the upper right hand area. I know you can't really see. I'm trying to get the camera, but it won't show. It's kind of up in this area. The key thing I will say this is always remember your right shoulder, because think again about shaking hands, even if we're not. Normally you would shake with that side and that helps draw it towards the person's eyes and they can see your name easier. So still keep that in the back of your mind that if I were shaking hands, it would be with my right and my name tag needs to go in this area. If you're wearing a lanyard, simply just drape it around your neck, and many times you can adjust it at the name tag, or you can take the cord at the back, pull it back a couple of inches, tie it in a half knot, and that brings it up. Don't raise it too high, but get it to a good height so that people can easily see your name. Keep in mind also that when you're at these events, you are there to network. Be ready to introduce yourself. If you're on a virtual like this, have your name like I've got mine. It says Mary Mahoney. If you're not comfortable with that, do like Mary M. But make sure that you have your name there. It helps people know who you are so that if they do want to call you out or recognize you, they've got your name right there on the screen. In person, as I said, just simply be ready to introduce yourself. And depending on the events, it could be helpful to even say, like, I'm currently a student at the University of Tennessee. It's kind of a nice, at times, conversation starter. Odds are the person will ask you, oh, what's your major? What are you planning to do? And that leads into a perfect conversation of just finding out information about each other. When you're talking with someone, ask questions of them. Just sort of like I've said, you might, depending on the event, you may even say something like, well, did you go to school at the University of Tennessee? Or are you an alum? Or where did you go to school? Be gracious, don't insult their schools. We can have our little, shall we say, football rivalries, but we can have fun with that in a nice way. Maybe ask what they major in. Well, what do they do? How did they get where they are? If you notice, I'm asking questions about the individual. And so I'm learning maybe like, okay, well, what was their major? Where are they working? What do they do? Notice my next bullet. If you are networking and you are trying to make leads for jobs, do not ask if they have jobs. If you start a conversation with someone and let's just say you find out they work for Syngenta, and you're like, ooh, they work for Syngenta, and then you just turn in and go, do y'all have any jobs? Are you hiring? Literally, if that person kind of looks at you and they go, no, your conversation's over. It's stopped before you even started it. And so you have to think about, okay, let me build up to this. So again, asking someone what they do, tell me more about their job, how they got there, what's it like to work there. That makes it then easier for you to say something like, wow, that sounds like a really neat place to work there. If I were interested, how could I find out about opportunities? Could I reach out to you? So notice we've kind of talked a little. I've expressed interest. I've learned some things. And then I'm just saying, wow, how would I find out about working there? How could I learn about opportunities? You've made more of a connection with the person and they're much more willing to help you. So keep that in mind as a way to approach. Listen and focus on the person you're talking to, meaning look at them, talk to them, and pay attention. Don't be like looking over their shoulder, looking over here, turning around back there. If you're doing that when you're interacting with someone, they just feel like you're not paying any attention and they're just almost like, okay, when are they going to move on? So you need to be looking at them and you need to focus and you need to respond to the things you're saying and ask questions. So again, really think about that and focus on it. Again, I cannot stress enough that first impressions count. So very important how you're interacting with individuals. A couple of last things I want to touch on are cell phones. Again, this would be at any function, whether it's a dinner, a reception. They need to be off or on silent. And do not check your phone. I love this picture, even though it's kind of a family get together, but everybody is on their device and not paying any attention. Realize whatever you're doing, wherever you are, be in the moment there. Again, your phone should be on silent or turned off. It should be in your pocket. It should be in a purse, a handbag. Don't have it so it's easy access because there is that inclination to want to check it and you certainly don't want to do it, and don't lay it on the table. Again, the company representative you may be with may have theirs and lay it. Again, it's different. They've got their job. You need to keep yours put away. If for some reason you need to check your phone, excuse yourself and get away out of the room. Don't just step over from like the table and then pull it out and check it. Go outside that area so that they don't see that that's what you're doing. So again, think about it and keep these things in mind. A couple of last comments for you. Most cases, your host will pay for the meal. I say most cases, it's really like 9 times out of 10. But I'm also going to say always make sure you've got a credit or debit card with you just to be on the safe side. But if it is definitely part of the interview process and they have invited you out, they will be paying. Be punctual. I would, most cases, say that I would meet them there 5 to 10 minutes. Just think about it as an interview. We usually tell you to arrive a little bit before, not much over 10 minutes before. Meeting for a meal, definitely be there 5 to 10 so that you're there, you're ready, and you're on time. Better that you wait than the employer is waiting on you. Um, Keep in mind responding to RSVPs. This is something that's very important. There can be things that we use in our handshake system where companies are hosting events. There can be companies that send you invitations. There can be other personal things that you get that have what we call RSVP on there, which in essence is saying, respond, please. Key thing, do it. Don't wait till the last minute. Do it. And when you make that response of saying, yes, you will attend, make that commitment to be there. Nothing is worse than an organization figuring, okay, we're going to have like 50 people because they've said they'll be there, and then half that number show up. Money is wasted then on the food that they ordered or the things they planned for, and individuals didn't show. And I can assure you, companies will not be happy about that, nor will individuals. Occasionally, you will get an invitation that says regrets only. The only time you need to respond to that one is if you are not planning to attend. And so, again, by not responding, you are implying that you will be there. One of the last things I've got on here, and most importantly, say thank you. If it's an interview, say thank you. If it has been a meal discussing about a position, when it's all over, the host is paying, you might just say something like, thank you so much for the meal. This was really nice. And then probably as you're walking out and you're kind of having your final say-lets in the parking lot, again, thank you for the evening. You can kind of change your wordings. Thank you for an interview, literally a job interview, a virtual time. I've seen it now where people, like, thank you so much for meeting with me or something. But again, it's just being polite and just saying thank you. I emphasize this because so many times I hear from organizations, companies that say, I took a student out to dinner and they never said thank you. And I just cannot stress that enough. You should say it in person, and potentially you may even want to send an email to them like that evening or the next day, again, thanking them for taking the time, how much you enjoyed interacting and learning more about the position, the company, and you look forward to hearing from them. It leaves a positive taste in that other person's mouth, and it makes them feel like you truly are sincere. So really think about the words thank you and using them when you can, because it is a very important and probably one of the best things that we can say to somebody. So I hope this information has helped and provided some good information for you. I really do regret that I am not there to talk with you all in person and to answer questions that you may have, but I've given you my email address right here. And feel free, if you have a question or a comment, to reach out to me. Again, I'm Mary Mahoney. You can see the M Mahoney at utk.edu. And I hope this information has been helpful to you. And I look forward to the future when I can see you in person. Thank you so much. Good luck and take care. Bye.